Okay, this is Rani Ahmed with you. This is lesson 7 in TKTCL control flow. Today we're talking about for loops. Sometimes in programming you would need to uh, repetitively process the same logic on for a well-known number of times. Okay, therefore we use the command for. Okay, now I'm going first to explain the code. Okay, we have two examples. We used an if statement, so when I run the program it will ask me if this which example I want to be using. Okay, I want to use. So this example 1, okay, here if example 1 it will process me example 1, and if I go to example 2 it will process me only example 2, and if I finish the example it will exit my program. Okay, now uh, now my first example is about having one for loop. Okay, and it should run from for around 11 times. Okay, uh, uh, how it's gonna run me 11 times? It's gonna take every time the older value of k, which we started with here as 0, k is now 0. Every time it will increment with a new value of I. Okay, so the older k, okay, will take the older every time it will take the current value of I, which is what we count with, okay, to add it on k. So as if we're summing up all the numbers from 0 till 10. Okay, every time we take the older k, whatever it is, and add the current I. In for loop we start with saying set I as 0, and as long as I less than or equal to 10 here, okay, say set the older value of I as the expression of the older value of I. So set the newer value of I as the expression of the older value of I plus 1, which means we are incrementing I every time. Okay, so as long as I less than or equal to 10. So the first time it will start with I is 0, next time we'll start with I equal 1, equals 2, equals 3, blah, until 3, until it is 10. Okay, and every time I will be printing the current value of the sum. Okay, the total value. Now this key pressed is just this custom command. We'll talk about it later, okay, and about procedures, but for now understand that when I call this it will go to this and make me my own pose. Just when I press enter it will proceed. And once the for loop ends here, so this is my code for the for loop, so once the for loop ends here it will tell me how much k is now, and it will say end of program, and there is a new line here, okay, between this and this, and it will exit the program. So running lesson 7. Okay, so we'll take example number 1. So it will start with k as 0 plus the current I, which is 0. So we have 0. Next time 1. Next time 1 plus 2 will be 3. 3 plus 3 will be 6, and so on. So this is how it will go line to line until you get 10 times. So the sum is 55, and this is where the program ends. So this is how for loop works. It parses, or it moves or changes the value of I, okay, according to this condition, and this is the stop condition, and this is what changes I. Okay, so we put the starting point, the ending point this way, and we say we tell for loop how I, the counter, will change. You can use any other variable instead of I, but it's usually people in programming use I as the counter. So this is how for loop works. Okay, so it goes from 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6 until you finish. Okay, now going next to the second example. Here I have I think I will be programming here a square using stars like this. Okay, lines of stars like this. So I'll be using, instead of this form of incrementing I, I'll use this command named increment and I. So this is a simpler form. So I say for set I 1, so starting from I equals 1, I less than 20, and increment I. Now for set K as 1, this is a nested loop. So I have a loop inside another loop. Okay, so what will happen is start with the first loop, go into the nested loop, the internal loop, and complete the internal loop until it finishes, then move again to the next step in the external loop and go again, complete the internal loop. Okay, then go to the next step in the first loop, and in the second, in the internal loop, finish it, and so on. So if I go again and select lesson 7 with example 2, okay, this is my square or my rectangle, whatever. So this is how I made a loop. So I say set I equals 1, I less than 20, and increment I every time I pass by this line. Okay, now every time I pass by this line, I take the order value of z, which is this, an empty character, okay, space, an empty character, and I set it with every time I take the order z. If I start, for example, for the first time in the nested internal loop, okay, it will be z, just one character, one star character, one asterisk. And next time it will be 2, because you took the order z, which was 1 star, okay, and now you've placed it here, so it will have a star, then a star next to it, then you'll have z again with 2 stars, so until you fill it with how many times? 20 times. Okay, now you print z, and here from puts $z, it means I finished and completed this loop, and then I move to the next loop. No, I don't move to the next loop. First I finish this loop, then I proceed in processing the external loop, which I did not finish the first step yet. Okay, so it will print this whole line for me full of 20 stars. Then when it prints them, it resets the line and go again to the next line. So this is how it goes. Okay, a line after the line after a line after a line until we have 20 times. So the external one will represent the rows, and the internal one will represent the columns, if you'd like to say. Okay, and this is how for loop works. So I need the starting point, the condition which will control where it should stop, and the operation that will manipulate the counter or the pointer for my loop before it stops. Okay, and this is our program for the for loop. This concludes the for loop. Thanks.